Janet Yellen has stated that on June 1st, the US is potentially going to default on their debt for the first time in history. 87 times they have approached the debt ceiling, and 87 times we have raised it. So is it going to be different on the 88th? And what does that mean for you? What does that mean for the state of the economy? I believe that the media finds these trigger words that create clickbait. Lucky for them, Trump announced that he's going to be running for president again. And so they're going to have a ton of clickbait coming forward. But what happens if this debt ceiling, that's the new 15 seconds of fame and is the new trigger word, actually collapses? First, let's talk about what the debt ceiling is. A while ago, the US government decided that rather than approving every line item on a bill, they were just going to create one giant pool of money that the government can tap. Now, when the US needs extra cash, it goes and it borrows money from other countries. And so the US, being the global force, being the global currency, so countries like China have a giant trade deficit with the US, and the US is now indebted to these countries. Well, there are trillions of dollars that the US is in debt and only about $200 billion in reserves. That would be like most Americans. Most Americans have very little money in their savings account, but owe hundreds of thousands of dollars, especially if they take out a mortgage. So what is going to happen if the US decides to default on their debt? Well, it's no different than if you default on your Visa bills. What happens if you have a 0% interest on your Visa card, but you make a late payment? Your interest rate goes from 0 to 20. And then what happens? There's repercussions. The creditors, American Express, Capital One, your local bank, they then start to lower your credit limits because you become a higher risk borrower. And one late payment trashes your credit score. So as we approach this daunting June 1st deadline, do you really think the US economy and the US Federal Reserve is going to allow us to default on our debt? Tell me in the comments below what you think. I'm going to give you my opinion. I don't believe so. Because history tells us that the US always comes to terms and raises the debt ceiling. Here's why. The more inflation, meaning the lower the value of the dollar becomes, the less expensive that debt actually is. So the longer the US holds the debt, the less they actually have to pay back. Now, they have some easy solutions that would have drastic repercussions. They could go print money. And if they go just print more money to pay off the trillions of dollars of debt, what happens? Now the US dollar gets devalued and inflation skyrockets. And that has its own set of consequences. Now, here's another perspective that a lot of people are taking. And this is really why you shouldn't have any fear. The US, in reality, while we're the hero for most, we're also the villains in a lot of people's eyes, especially people who aren't born and raised in this beautiful country. We have the strongest military force, period. No matter what Fox and CNN and all these media outlets want you to believe, we have the strongest Navy. We have the strongest Air Force by far. We have the strongest weapons. We have the best technology. And so, if you remember when you were a school kid, if you weren't the bully, what would happen if the bully took $5 from you and you try to get it to be paid back? The best you can go do is go call a parent. Well, guess what? The US is the parent. The US is daddy. And the US is the daddy that can beat up all the other daddies. So very simply, if all else fails, the US can simply say we're not paying it back. And that has its own set of consequences as well. It means our interest rates go up, our treasury bonds fail, we will experience more inflation than we ever have. The Social Security checks that you're supposed to get every month if you're a retired person, stop coming in. Anybody who's paid at the federal level could potentially lose their job, or paychecks can all but stop. Those are such dire consequences. And so I believe that this is just another ploy by media outlets to get you to get scared and get you to live in fear and have another talking point. Here's what's going to happen. Right as we approach the June 1st deadline, right after Memorial Day weekend, the U.S. is going to come to an agreement. Joe Biden and the Treasury are going to come to an agreement. They're going to raise the debt ceiling. You're going to start to hear the word recession all over the media because unemployment numbers are up. Interest rates are going to start to get driven down. I bet you as a part of them agreeing to raise the debt ceiling, while this is not supposed to happen, there's going to be a back-end deal to say, okay, we'll raise the debt ceiling, but rates have to start dropping. The Fed rate will start to come down. Inversely, you're going to see consumer rates and mortgages, auto loans, credit cards all start to dip. And that's going to be the beginning of quantitative easing. And then you're going to start to slowly see a recovery. And so now all you have to do is leave in the comments below and tell me when you think that this economy is going to be booming again. Because at the end of the day, I think we're close. And I think this recession, while most people think it's about to start, I know from being in the financial markets that we've been in it. They just changed the definition a year ago. So don't let that fear bother you. Continue to live your life with a smile and stay positive, y'all. Subscribe and like for more content like this.